I always thought I was a patient person. Turns out 7 years of being married into Thomas's family could test the patience of a saint, and I'm definitely no saint. My name is Stacy, by the way, and for 7 long years I've navigated the treacherous waters of the Henderson clan, a family so wealthy and self-important they probably thought oxygen owed them a thank you note for breathing it. My apartment, the one I'd scrimped and saved for before Thomas and I even met, was my sanctuary. It wasn't huge, just a cozy two-bedroom in a vibrant part of the city, sunlight always finding its way through the big windows, a mismatched collection of furniture that told the story of my life. I loved it. To them, it was a charming little starter flat, a phrase usually delivered by my mother-in-law, Naomi, with a pitying smile that made me want to scream. "Oh, Stacy, dear," Naomi would coo, her eyes sweeping over my living room during one of her rare forced visits. "It's just so intimate. How do you manage when you have people over? Not that you could have many, of course." Her daughter, Jillian, Thomas's sister, would usually be smirking beside her. "It's very practical, isn't it? I suppose it's good to be sensible with your finances when you're, well, you know." The unspoken "not like us" hung heavy in the air. And Thomas? My dear, conflict avoidant Thomas would just offer a weak, placating smile. Later, when I'd inevitably vent, he'd say, "Aw, come on, Stace. They don't mean anything by it. That's just how they are. Don't take it so personally." "Not take it personally?" I'd hiss back, usually pacing our small kitchen. "They're basically calling our home a shoebox and me a charity case, Thomas. How else am I supposed to take it?" He'd sigh, running a hand through his hair. "They're just old-fashioned. They like big houses. It's not a reflection on you." But it always felt like a reflection on me. Every family gathering at their sprawling, soulless mansion, a place so large you needed a map to find the bathroom, was an exercise in subtle and not so subtle humiliation. My clothes weren't designer enough. My job wasn't prestigious enough. My opinions weren't, well, theirs. Jillian especially seemed to take a perverse pleasure in highlighting my perceived inadequacies. At one particularly excruciating Sunday brunch, she loudly admired a new diamond bracelet her husband Parker had gifted her. "Oh, Stacy, you should get Thomas to buy you something like this. It really elevates an outfit, though I suppose it might look a bit much in your current circumstances." I just smiled tightly and said, "I prefer things with a little less sparkle and a little more soul, Jillian, but it's lovely on you." Thomas had kicked me under the table. "Be nice," he'd mouthed. Nice? I was practically a diplomat. The worst part was, I knew Thomas saw it. He wasn't stupid. He just chose every single time to prioritize their feelings, their comfort, their delicate sensibilities over mine. His spine seemed to dissolve the moment his mother or sister entered the room. Christmas was always the pinnacle of the Henderson family performance. Usually it was held at Naomi and Leonard's ostentatious estate, a command performance where everyone played their signed roles. Naomi was the gracious, if slightly condescending queen. Leonard, her husband, was the benevolent patriarch, occasionally booming about stock prices. Jillian and Parker were the golden couple, and Thomas and I were the supporting cast, mostly there to make them look good by comparison. I dreaded it. The forced smiles, the passive-aggressive gifts, a subscription to Good Housekeeping from Naomi one year, to give you some ideas, dear, the endless parade of their achievements. This year, with December looming, a familiar knot of anxiety began to tighten in my stomach. I was already mentally preparing my excuses for early departure, my practiced smiles, my non-committal grunts in response to their barbs. I just wanted to get through it, to retreat back to my little apartment and breathe. Then, last Tuesday afternoon, my phone buzzed. The caller ID flashed, Naomi. My stomach didn't just sink, it plummeted straight through the floor, probably landing somewhere in the apartment below. I took a deep breath, plastered on a fake smile I knew she couldn't see but could probably sense, and answered, Stacy, dear. Her voice was like poisoned honey, sickeningly sweet. I have the most wonderful idea for Christmas this year. I swear I could hear the universe chuckling. Or maybe that was just the sound of my last nerve finally snapping. Oh, I managed, trying to keep my voice light, though I felt a cold dread creeping up my spine. Wonderful how, Naomi? Well, dear, she began, and I could practically hear the smug smile in her voice. We were all thinking, and it was rather a collective inspiration, really, that it's high time you had a chance well, to host. I gripped the phone tighter. Host? Yes, Christmas for all of us. Here in the city, she chirped, as if suggesting a casual coffee. It'll be such a lovely change of pace from the usual fuss at our place. And, she added, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial, patronizing tone, it'll be good practice for you, dear, for when you and Thomas finally manage to get a proper house. Learn the ropes of entertaining a larger group. In the background, I heard a distinct sharp sound, a snort, a giggle. It had to be Jillian. My blood pressure spiked. 22 people. That was the usual Henderson Christmas head count. 22 people in my two-bedroom apartment, which comfortably seated 6 for dinner, maybe 8 if we got creative with floor cushions. I glanced around my living room, my sanctuary. I pictured Uncle Theo, with his booming laugh and tendency to spill red wine, squeezed onto my beloved vintage armchair. I imagined Aunt Presley, who chain-smoked on any available balcony, turning my small plant-filled one into an ashtray. I envisioned a swarm of hyperactive Henderson cousins ransacking my bookshelves. Naomi, I started, trying to sound reasonable, my apartment. It's really not set up for that many people. It's quite small, as you know. Nonsense, dear, she trilled. It's all about being resourceful. Think of it as a fun challenge. Cozy, that's the word. It'll be a truly cozy Christmas. Jillian is already so excited, aren't you, darling? A muffled, enthusiastic, totally came from Jillian's direction. I looked desperately at the empty space beside me on the sofa, wishing Thomas were there. He wasn't. He was at some after-work drinks thing with his colleagues. I really don't think. Oh, don't be such a worrywart, Stacy. We'll all pitch in, of course. Well, not with the cooking or cleaning, naturally. That's the hostess's purview, but we'll bring our charming selves. She laughed, a brittle, unpleasant sound. It's settled, then. We'll descend around noon on Christmas Eve. Gives you plenty of time to prepare. So thrilled you're on board, dear. Ta-ta. And she hung up, just like that. A royal decree. My Christmas, my home, my sanity, all commandeered. The silence in my apartment felt deafening. I sank onto the sofa, the phone clattering from my numb fingers. Humiliation washed over me, hot and sharp. It wasn't just the imposition, the sheer audacity of it. It was the casual cruelty, the delight they so clearly took in putting me in this impossible, demeaning position. Good practice. As if I were a child playing house. When Thomas finally strolled in an hour later, smelling faintly of beer and corporate cheer, I was still sitting there, a storm brewing inside me. Hey, he said, dropping his keys on the counter. Rough day? Your mother called, I said, my voice flat. Oh, yeah? What's up? He opened the fridge, peering inside. She informed me that I'm hosting Christmas for the entire family. Here. He paused, milk carton in hand. He didn't look surprised, and not even a flicker. He just looked at me. And then he offered a weak, hesitant smile. Oh, right. Yeah, she mentioned she might suggest that. My jaw tightened. She mentioned it. When? Last week, I think. Maybe the week before. He finally closed the fridge, turning to face me fully. Look, Stace, it could be fun. A bit of a squeeze, sure, but we can make the best of it. It'll be an adventure. An adventure? My voice rose despite my efforts to keep it level. Thomas, she said it was good practice for me. Jillian was snickering in the background. They're doing this to mock me, to mock us, and our home. He sighed, that familiar, weary sigh he always used when he didn't want to deal with something. Come on, don't be dramatic. Mum just wants everyone together. And maybe she's right. A bit of a challenge could be good. Show them what you can do. The betrayal was a physical ache in my chest. He knew. He knew for at least a week, possibly longer, that this ambush was coming, and he hadn't said a word. He hadn't defended me, hadn't tried to dissuade her, hadn't even given me a heads up so I could prepare myself. He'd just let me walk right into it. You knew about this for a week? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet now. And you didn't think to tell me? He shifted uncomfortably. I I didn't want to stress you out. I figured she might not even go through with it. Stress me out? A cold fury, unlike anything I'd ever felt before, began to settle deep in my bones. It was chillingly calm, terrifyingly clear. He hadn't wanted to stress me out, or he hadn't wanted to deal with the inevitable argument with his mother's displeasure if he dared to push back. I knew the answer. I stood up, my movements precise. I walked over to him, looked him straight in the eye. The weak smile faltered on his lips. Fine, I said, my voice devoid of any emotion except that icy calm. I'll host Christmas. He blinked, relief washing over his face. Great, see? I knew you'd come around. It'll be memorable, I finished for him, turning away. Oh, it would be memorable, all right, just not in the way any of them expected. The next few days I was the picture of reluctant compliance. Whenever Naomi called with helpful suggestions, which were really just thinly veiled criticisms of my usual taste, I'd listen patiently. Now, Stacy, dear, for the turkey, she'd say, her voice dripping with condescension. You simply must get a heritage bird, none of those dreadful supermarket things. And for the stuffing, I have a family recipe. It's rather complex, but I suppose you can try your best. Of course, Naomi, I'd reply, my voice a perfect blend of meekness and gratitude. Thank you for the guidance. Jillian even sent me a Pinterest board titled Christmas Inspo for Small Spaces and Budgets. It was full of DIY decorations made from paper plates and glitter. I wanted to throw my phone across the room. Instead, I texted back, So creative, Jilly. Thanks. Thomas, bless his oblivious heart, was thrilled. See, he said one evening, beaming at me as I pretended to sketch out a seating plan that involved people practically sitting in each other's laps. You're handling this so well. I knew you could. Mum's actually impressed, you know. She said you're being very mature about it. Mature, right. If only he knew the thoughts that were really occupying my mind. While I was nodding along to Naomi's lectures on the proper way to fold a napkin, apparently my usual method was appallingly rustic. I wasn't actually envisioning 22 Hendersons crammed into my living room. Oh no, my plans were grander, much, much grander. The seed had been planted that night after Thomas's casual betrayal. It started as a wild, impossible fantasy, a way to cope with the rage. But the more I thought about it, the more it took shape, twisting from a daydream into something tangible, something audacious, something that might actually work. The real turning point, the moment that erased any lingering speck of doubt, any misguided loyalty I might have still felt towards Thomas, came a few days later. He was out playing squash with Parker. a weekly ritual I usually appreciated for the peace and quiet. I was tidying up and his tablet was lying on the coffee table, screen dark. We shared it sometimes, mostly for streaming movies. On a whim, I picked it up. It wasn't password protected. A notification banner was at the top of the screen, a new message in a group chat. The group chat name? Operation Humble Stacy. My blood ran cold. My fingers trembled slightly as I tapped it open. The participants were Naomi, Jillian, and Thomas, my husband. The messages scrolled back for weeks, maybe even months. Naomi. Just had another chat with T. He's on board with the Christmas idea, thinks it's for the best. Jillian. LOL. Can't wait to see her face. Does she even own enough plates? Betting $50 she has a meltdown by Christmas Eve dinner. Naomi. Jillian, be nice. It's a learning experience for her, though I'll take that bet. $100 says she's crying before the appetizers are even served. Parker, via Jillian presumably. Make it $150. This is going to be comedy gold. My eyes scanned frantically, searching for Thomas's contributions, and there they were. Thomas, she's been a bit uppity lately, needs to be taken down a peg or two. Thomas, agreed. She needs to learn her place. This will be good for her. Thomas, don't worry, I'll manage her. She'll complain, but she'll do it. She always does. She needs to learn her place. The words burned into my brain. This wasn't just passive Thomas, conflict avoidant Thomas, too weak to stand up to his mother. This was malicious Thomas. This was Thomas actively, gleefully participating in a scheme to humiliate his own wife. This Christmas challenge wasn't a spur-of-the-moment power play by Naomi. It was a premeditated collaborative effort designed to break me, and my husband was in on it. He was betting on my failure. I closed the tablet, my hand surprisingly steady. The cold fury from the other night returned, but now it was sharpened, honed into a diamond-hard resolve. There was no more room for hurt, only a chilling, exhilarating clarity. They wanted to teach me a lesson? Oh, a lesson would be taught, all right. I picked up my phone. My thumb hovered over Leah's name. My best friend, my rock. The one person who had always seen the Hendersons for what they were and had never understood what I saw in Thomas, especially lately. I pressed call. Leah? It's Stacy. My voice was calm, almost serene. Are you free to talk? I have an idea for Christmas. A really, really good idea. I walked over to the window, looking out at the city lights. Oh, it will be good for someone, I murmured to myself, a ghost of a smile playing on my lips. But it won't be me learning a lesson. Spill, Leah said, her voice crackling with anticipation through the phone. I could practically hear her settling in, probably with a glass of wine. And don't leave out a single juicy detail. I've been waiting 7 years for you to go full scorched earth on those people. And so I told her everything. Naomi's decree, Thomas's initial betrayal, and then the gut punch of the Operation Humble Stacy group chat. Leah listened, punctuating my story with gasps, outraged squawks, and the occasional, "That absolute bastard!" When I finally laid out the embryonic stages of my revenge plan, there was a moment of stunned silence on her end. Then she let out a slow whistle. Stacy, my God, that is diabolical, and I absolutely love it. You're a twisted genius. So you're in? I asked, a genuine smile finally breaking through. In? Honey, I'll drive the getaway car. Metaphorically speaking, of course, mostly. With Leah as my enthusiastic if virtual co-conspirator, the plan began to take on a beautiful sharp-edged clarity. She was brilliant at brainstorming the tricky bits, the little details that would make it all seamless. My first move was to call Naomi. I dialed her number, took a deep breath, and put on my best dutiful daughter-in-law voice. Naomi, hi, it's Stacy. I was just doing some more planning for Christmas, and I had a few questions if you have a moment. Of course, dear, she said, her tone implying she was doing me a massive favor. What is it now? Well, I began, feigning a slight tremor of anxiety, I really want to make this special. You know, to show you all how much I appreciate everything. So I was thinking about the menu. You mentioned the heritage turkey, of course, but what about side dishes? Are there any particular family favorites I absolutely must include to make it a truly memorable Henderson Christmas? I could almost hear her preen. Well, dear, since you ask, Uncle Theo simply must have his creamed onions, the way my grandmother used to make them, and Jillian adores my special cranberry compote. It has a touch of Grand Marnier, very sophisticated. And Leonard, well, Leonard has a weakness for a proper rich gravy. She prattled on for another 10 minutes, listing off increasingly elaborate and expensive sounding dishes, all while I made encouraging noises and diligently took notes. And champagne, of course, she concluded, a good quality one, nothing too frugal. Of course, I echoed, only the best for the family. The next part was trickier, securing Leonard's credit card details. Leah and I workshopped a few ideas. A fake charity donation? Too complicated. Offering to buy a group gift for a distant relative they all pretended to like? Plausible. Then inspiration struck. Leonard loved to feel important, to be seen as a man of taste and discernment, especially in front of me, the unsophisticated daughter-in-law. A few days later I called him directly. Leonard, it's Stacy. I hope I'm not disturbing you. Stacy, no, just reviewing some portfolios. What can I do for you? His voice was gruff but not unkind. He was generally less overtly hostile than Naomi or Jillian, more dismissively patronizing. Well, I said, injecting a note of newfound, slightly nervous ambition into my voice, I was thinking, since everyone is coming into the city and I really want to make an effort this year, I had an idea for a little pre-Christmas treat. I found this rather lovely little wine bar, quite exclusive, and I thought it might be nice to arrange a small private wine tasting for the family on, say, the 23rd. Just something simple, a few select vintages, some artisanal cheeses, a little touch of class, you know. There was a pause. I could almost hear the cogs turning in his head. Stacy, showing initiative, suggesting something upscale. A wine tasting, eh? He said, a hint of surprise in his tone. That's not a bad idea, Stacy. Not bad at all. Showing a bit of sophistication. Good. Thank you, Leonard, I said, trying not to gag on the forced humility. The only thing is the venue is quite popular, and to secure a private booking, they require a credit card on file for incidentals just to hold the reservation. I was wondering, since my credit limit isn't terribly high, if I could possibly use yours just for the booking. I'll handle all the actual costs myself, of course, from my savings. It's just to secure the spot. I held my breath. This was the crucial moment. He grunted. Sensible to book ahead. Don't want to miss out. All right, Stacy, just for the booking, you say? Absolutely, I chirped. Just a formality. Very well. He then proceeded to read out his Amex Platinum card number, expiration date, and CVV code. I scribbled them down, my hand shaking almost imperceptibly. See that you handle it properly now. Don't want any mishaps. Of course, Leonard. Thank you so much. This will be a wonderful start to the Christmas festivities. After I hung up, I stared at the string of numbers on the notepad. A slow, predatory smile spread across my face. I picked up my phone and sent a text to Leah. Phase 1 complete. The eagle has landed his plastic. Her reply came back almost instantly. Yes, Operation Humble them is a go. The moment Leonard's credit card details were safely in my possession, I moved fast. There was no actual wine tasting, of course. That little fib had served its purpose beautifully. My real target was far more ambitious. I spent the next hour on the website of the Grand Hotel, the most exclusive, most opulent, most ridiculously expensive hotel in the city. The kind of place the Hendersons aspired to be seen in, but probably only for a fancy dinner, not an overnight stay unless someone else was footing the bill. I navigated straight to their suites, the presidential suite. It was palatial. Multiple bedrooms, a dining room that could seat a small army, a private terrace with city views, a grand piano, which I was sure none of them could play, and a price tag that made my eyes water, even knowing I wouldn't be the one paying. Perfect. I booked it for 2 nights, Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. Using Leonard's card, I paid the hefty deposit, then called the hotel's concierge services. "Good afternoon," I said, my voice oozing polite confidence. "I'm calling regarding a booking for the presidential suite under the name Henderson. I'd like to arrange a few enhancements for our stay." The concierge, a smooth-voiced man named Jean-Pierre, was all professional courtesy. "Certainly, madam. How may we assist you?" "We'll require private catering for Christmas Eve dinner and Christmas Day lunch. Something festive but very high-end. Think lobster, caviar, prime rib, and an open bar fully stocked with premium spirits and, of course, an excellent selection of champagne. Your best, naturally." I could almost hear Naomi's voice echoing in my head. "Nothing too frugal." "And could you ensure there are lavish floral arrangements throughout the suite, and perhaps some age-appropriate high-end stocking stuffers for the younger members of the party, and a few extra bathrobes, the fluffiest ones you have?" I kept adding requests, each one more extravagant than the last, all to be charged to the room. Jean-Pierre took it all in stride, assuring me everything would be magnifique. Once the hotel arrangements were locked in, it was time for the invitation. I spent an evening designing a beautiful, elegant Evite, gold lettering on a deep crimson background, tasteful snowflakes drifting across the design. It looked incredibly expensive. The text read, "Dearest Family." This year, I wanted to do something truly special for Christmas to express my gratitude for all your guidance and support over the years. As a token of my appreciation, please accept this invitation for an unforgettable Christmas celebration. Join us for an all-expenses-paid luxury experience at the Grand Hotel in the Presidential Suite from noon on December 24th until checkout on December 26th. All catering, beverages, and festive cheer will be provided. My gift to the family. With love and anticipation, Stacy. I hit send, and the Evite winged its way to 22 Henderson email addresses, including Thomas's. I pictured their faces, the initial confusion, the dawning disbelief, and then inevitably the greed. It didn't take long. My phone started buzzing within minutes. First a text from Jillian. "Stacy? Is this for real? The Grand?" Then a call from Thomas, his voice a mixture of shock and something I couldn't quite decipher. Was it pride or suspicion? "Stace, what is this? The presidential suite? How?" "It's my Christmas gift to the family, sweetie," I said, my voice dripping with saccharine sweetness. "I've been saving up. I just wanted to do something nice to show everyone how much I care." "But the cost?" he stammered. "Don't you worry your pretty little head about that," I cooed. "It's all taken care of." The Hendersons, after their initial shock, reacted exactly as I'd predicted. They were suspicious at first. How could Stacy afford this? Was it a trick? Then their inherent arrogance and sense of entitlement kicked in. Of course, Stacy was finally trying to impress them. She'd probably taken out a massive loan, or maybe Thomas was secretly bankrolling it to make her look good. Either way, a free luxury Christmas. They weren't about to question it too closely. The pinnacle was the call from Naomi. Her voice, usually so sharp and critical, was practically purring. "Stacy, darling," she began, a tone of astonished approval I'd never heard from her before. "We received your rather extravagant invitation. The Grand Hotel, my. I just wanted everyone to have a wonderful, relaxing Christmas, Naomi," I said, laying it on thick. "You all deserve to be pampered." "Well, it's certainly a gesture," she conceded. Then her voice softened, almost conspiratorially. "Perhaps there's hope for you yet, dear, learning to appreciate the finer things. Leonard is quite impressed. He said you even organized a little wine tasting beforehand. Very thoughtful." I could barely contain the smirk threatening to split my face. "I just want everyone to have an unforgettable Christmas," I repeated, my voice a perfect imitation of sincerity. "Oh, I'm sure it will be, dear," Naomi said, practically cooing now. "Quite unforgettable." Unforgettable. She had no idea. Christmas Eve arrived, and with it the Henderson horde. They didn't so much enter the presidential suite at the Grand Hotel as descend upon it, a swarm of locusts in expensive, slightly too loud resort wear. Their eyes, wide and gleaming with avarice, scanned the opulent surroundings, the soaring ceilings, the plush velvet sofas, the glittering chandeliers, the panoramic city views. "Well, Stacy," Naomi declared, sweeping into the grand salon as if she owned the place, which in a way she temporarily did, or at least her husband's credit card did. "I must say this is adequate." Coming from her, that was practically a rave review. Jillian, right behind her, let out a low whistle. "Not bad, Stace, not bad at all. Did Thomas win the lottery or something?" She winked, a sly, knowing look that implied I was clearly incapable of orchestrating, let alone funding such extravagance. "I told you it's my treat," I said, smiling sweetly, playing the gracious if slightly overwhelmed hostess. "Please, everyone, make yourselves at home. Champagne is chilling." And make themselves at home they did. Within minutes Uncle Theo had claimed the best armchair, his booming voice echoing through the suite as he demanded someone find the sports channel on the enormous flat-screen TV. Aunt Presley immediately located the private terrace and lit up a cigarette, flicking ash into a potted orchid. The various cousins, ranging in age from preteen to early 20s, tore through the suite like a pack of sugared-up hyenas, opening every door, bouncing on the beds, and loudly debating who got which of the lavishly appointed guest rooms. The hotel staff, bless their professional souls, were models of polite efficiency, but I saw the occasional flicker of bewilderment in their eyes as they navigated the chaos. Waiters circulated with silver trays laden with champagne flutes and elaborate canapes. The Hendersons grabbed them without a word of thanks, often talking right through the staff as if they were invisible. "More champagne?" bellowed Leonard from across the room, snapping his fingers at a passing waiter who looked barely old enough to shave. "And tell them to bring up those lobster puffs again," Jillian called out, her mouth full. "These are divine. You should get the recipe, Stacy, though you'd probably mess it up in your tiny kitchen." I just smiled. "Of course, Jillian, I'll ask." "Thomas, dear," oblivious Thomas was beaming. He floated around the suite, a proud peacock, clearly believing I had finally, miraculously, won his family over. He kept patting my arm, whispering, "See, they love it. You're doing great, Stace." He seemed to genuinely think this display of opulence was a sincere gesture on my part, a desperate attempt to curry favor. The irony was almost too delicious. Throughout the evening, I played my role to perfection. I fetched drinks. I laughed at their terrible jokes. I nodded sympathetically When Naomi complained that the caviar, while acceptable, wasn't quite the same quality as the beluga she'd had on her last cruise. With every fresh bottle of champagne popped, every extravagant dish devoured, every new demand made upon the hotel staff, I made a mental note. I'd had a quiet word with Jean Pierre, the concierge, earlier. Any additional charges? I'd murmured, slipping him a generous tip from my own cash. Any breakages? Any special requests from my enthusiastic family members? Please ensure they are added directly to Mr. Leonard Henderson's room account. He's insisted on covering all incidentals. Jean Pierre had given me a discreet, understanding nod. But of course, madam, consider it done. The night wore on, a blur of forced cheer and blatant excess. They complimented me in their backhanded way. "You're finally learning how to do things properly, Stacy," Parker, Jillian's equally smug husband, remarked, swirling a glass of eye-wateringly expensive single malt Scotch. "Though I dread to think what this is costing you." He winked at Thomas. "It's worth every penny to see you all so happy," I replied, my smile unwavering. The climax of the evening's unintentional destruction came courtesy of Uncle Theo. Already several sheets to the wind, he was attempting an animated retelling of some tedious business anecdote, gesticulating wildly with a half-eaten vol au vent in one hand and a full glass of red wine in the other. His arm caught the edge of a delicate, antique-looking porcelain vase perched on a nearby console table. It wobbled, then crashed to the marble floor, shattering into a dozen pieces. A collective gasp went around the room, followed by an awkward silence. Uncle Theo just blinked owlishly at the mess. "Oops, Butterfingers." Jillian, after a moment, let out a tinkling laugh. "Oh, don't worry about it, Uncle Theo. It's probably just some cheap hotel tat. Stacy's got this covered, right, Stace?" She looked at me, a challenging glint in her eye. I met her gaze, my smile serene, almost beatific. "Of course, Jillian. Don't give it another thought. Everything is taken care of." As a liveried hotel attendant discreetly appeared to sweep up the porcelain shards, I caught Jean Pierre's eye across the room. He gave me the smallest, almost imperceptible nod. The cost of one antique Qing Dynasty replica vase was now happily residing on Leonard's growing tab. This Christmas was indeed proving to be unforgettable. Christmas morning dawned, or rather staggered into existence. The presidential suite looked like a Romanov palace after a particularly rowdy peasant uprising. Champagne flutes lay abandoned on every surface, some still holding dregs of bubbly, others overturned in sticky puddles. Canapé crumbs littered the expensive rugs. A stray sequin from someone's party dress glittered forlornly under the grand piano. The Hendersons emerged slowly one by one, looking considerably less glamorous than the night before. They were hungover, bleary-eyed, and already complaining. "Ugh, my head," groaned Jillian, flopping onto a chaise lounge, still in her silk pajamas. "Someone get me a mimosa, and tell room service to be quick about it. This Stacy-sponsored luxury is something I could get used to." Naomi, surprisingly chipper despite the carnage, was already mentally redecorating the suite. "You know, Stacy, if you'd chosen a slightly different color palette for the floral arrangements, it would have been much more effective. But a good effort, dear, a good effort. We'll have to do this again next year, perhaps a ski chalet in Aspen?" They lounged around, picking at the remnants of the Christmas Day brunch I'd pre-ordered. More lobster, more prime rib, more champagne, completely oblivious, utterly entitled. They discussed their presents, compared their hauls, and made casual dismissive remarks about the charming, if rather small, gifts I'd given them, thoughtful, carefully chosen books and artisanal chocolates, which had clearly been overshadowed by the sheer scale of the suite. Around 11:30, as the designated checkout time of noon approached, they began to gather their belongings, a slow, reluctant process. There was no sense of urgency, no thought of settling any bills. Why would there be? Stacy was covering it all, good old, easily manipulated Stacy. I watched them, a small, almost imperceptible smile playing on my lips. I'd already packed my small overnight bag, the one I'd actually brought, and it was waiting discreetly by the service entrance. My real luggage was already in a taxi en route to the airport. Just as Leonard was barking at Thomas to find that blasted bellhop for the bags, a distinguished figure appeared at the main doorway of the suite. It was Mr. Flores, the hotel manager, looking impeccably professional in his tailored suit, a polite but firm smile on his face. He held a leather-bound folder. "Good morning, Mr. Henderson," he said, his voice calm and clear, cutting through the general hubbub. "I trust you and your family enjoyed your Christmas stay with us at the Grand?" Leonard puffed out his chest. "Yes, yes, very satisfactory. Excellent service. My daughter-in-law, Stacy, arranged it all. Quite the surprise." He gestured vaguely in my direction. I offered a bland, pleasant smile. "Indeed," Mr. Flores said, his gaze briefly flicking towards me before returning to Leonard. "If you'd just like to come to the front desk at your convenience, sir, we can settle the account for your stay, the catering, the private bar service, and, of course," he paused delicately, "any incidental damages." He opened the folder, revealing a very, very long, itemized bill. A sudden, sharp silence fell over the room. Naomi, who had been examining her reflection in a gilded mirror, froze. Jillian stopped mid-sip of her mimosa. Leonard blinked. "Settle the account? What are you talking about? Stacy paid for everything. It was her gift." He chuckled, a dismissive, slightly confused sound. "Isn't that right, Stacy?" All eyes turned to me. I maintained my serene smile. "I made the initial arrangements, Leonard, as my gift for the first night's accommodation. As I recall, you kindly offered your card to secure the booking and cover any additional expenses beyond that." Mr. Flores nodded smoothly. "That is correct, Mr. Henderson. The initial deposit covered the suite for Christmas Eve, all subsequent charges for Christmas Day, the extensive catering, the fully stocked open bar, the floral arrangements, the premium stocking stuffers, the additional staff overtime for the holiday, and, of course, the replacement costs for the antique Qing Dynasty replica vase have been charged to the card you provided at booking." He even produced a small, neatly printed copy of the credit card authorization slip, the one Leonard had presumably signed when he checked in under the assumption it was a mere formality. Leonard's signature was clearly visible. The color drained from Leonard's face. He snatched the bill from Mr. Flores, his eyes scanning the columns of figures, his jaw slackening with every line. Naomi let out a strangled shriek. "Leonard, what is the meaning of this? What is that number at the bottom?" Jillian's perfectly made-up face was a mask of pale horror. Parker looked like he was about to be sick. Uncle Theo, miraculously somewhat sober, just stared, his mouth agape. There must be some mistake," Leonard finally sputtered, his voice hoarse. This is outrageous. Stacy, you said—" Thomas, who had been standing by silently, a confused frown on his face, finally seemed to grasp the enormity of what was happening. His head whipped towards me, his eyes wide with dawning horrified comprehension. The look on his face, a cocktail of disbelief, betrayal, and sheer panic, was almost worth the price of admission. Almost. By then, I was already slipping out the service door, my small bag in hand, the sounds of chaos erupting behind me, Naomi's escalating shrieks, Leonard's sputtering protests, Jillian's incredulous wails, were music to my ears. I didn't look back. My phone was already switched off. My pre-booked taxi was waiting. As it pulled away from the Grand Hotel, heading towards the airport, I allowed myself a small, satisfied sigh. I had only one regret, that I couldn't see their faces in person as the full weight of that bill, a figure well into the 5 digits, possibly nudging 6, truly sank in. But then again, imagination can be wonderfully vivid. I was already picturing it as I settled into my business class seat, sipping complimentary champagne on a flight to a secluded beach in Thailand, a world away from the Henderson Christmas catastrophe. The turquoise water lapped gently at the white sand, a soothing counterpoint to the faint reggae music drifting from the beach bar. I took another sip of my mango smoothie, the sun warm on my skin. It had been, I calculated, about 72 hours since the Hendersons' Christmas morning surprise. 72 hours of blissful, uninterrupted silence from that particular quarter. My old phone, the one with the Henderson adjacent contacts, was probably a smoldering wreck of missed calls and furious texts by now. I'd left it with Leah, with strict instructions to only power it on occasionally, purely for her own amusement, and to relay only the most pertinent or entertaining updates to my new untraceable Thai SIM card. My new phone buzzed on the sarong beside me. It was Leah. "You are an absolute legend," she said without preamble. Her voice was thick with laughter. "I just checked the old phone. 37 missed calls from Thomas, 12 from Naomi, 8 from Jillian, and a string of voicemails that are pure gold. You want the highlights?" "Give me the short version," I said, smiling. "I'm trying to achieve inner peace here." "Okay, short version. Thomas went through the 5 stages of grief in record time, started with confused pleading, moved to angry demands for an explanation, then descended into something resembling a toddler's tantrum, and finally landed on bitter accusations. Naomi's were mostly incoherent shrieking about ruin and ingratitude. Jillian seems to think you've committed a federal crime." "And the bill?" I asked, unable to resist. "Oh, the bill," Leah chuckled. "From what I can gather from Thomas's incoherent ramblings about financial Armageddon, it was substantial. Apparently Leonard tried to dispute it, but the Grand had impeccable records, including signed authorizations for every last bottle of vintage champagne and every broken piece of porcelain. They even had CCTV footage of Uncle Theo's vase-smashing incident. He's now claiming you drugged him." "Charming," I said, taking another sip of my smoothie. "And the family dynamic?" "Fractured. Spectacularly so. Apparently there was a massive screaming match in the hotel lobby. Naomi is blaming Leonard for giving you his card. Leonard is blaming Thomas for marrying you. Jillian is blaming everyone. Word is they had to put a significant portion on a high-interest emergency loan because Leonard's Amex was, shall we say, maxed out beyond its wildest dreams. Their precious social standing is taking a bit of a nosedive as whispers of the Henderson Hotel horror start to circulate amongst their snooty friends. "Karma," I murmured, watching a small crab scuttle across the sand. "It's a beautiful thing." "Indeed. So what's next for Stacy, international woman of mystery and financial retribution?" "Divorce papers are already with my lawyer, filed the morning I left," I said. "She has instructions to serve Thomas as soon as I give the word, which will be soon. Good girl, no looking back, none whatsoever." After I hung up with Leah, I lay back on the sun lounger, feeling a profound sense of lightness I hadn't experienced in years. It wasn't just the satisfaction of the revenge, though that was undeniably sweet. It was the liberation. The oppressive weight of the Hendersons, of Thomas's weakness, of constantly feeling small and undervalued, had lifted. My marriage? It was a casualty, yes, but a necessary one. It had been dead for a long time. I just hadn't been ready to sign the death certificate. The Operation Humble Stacy chat had been the final, irrefutable proof. Thomas hadn't just failed to protect me, he'd actively participated in trying to tear me down. There was no coming back from that. The price of my freedom and self-respect had been the implosion of that toxic dynamic, and it was a price I'd paid gladly. I thought about those voicemails Leah had described. The sheer panic, the fury, the dawning realization that their carefully constructed world of entitlement had been so spectacularly and publicly shattered by the one person they'd consistently underestimated. A genuine, unburdened smile touched my lips. I picked up my fresh, untainted phone and scrolled through photos of the local scenery, planning my afternoon, perhaps a boat trip to a nearby island, or maybe just another smoothie and a good book. The future stretched out before me, bright and unencumbered. Some gifts, I mused to the gentle rhythm of the waves, truly do keep on giving. And this gift, the one I had given myself, was the best one of all.